I'd like to ask a question of you and express my own concerns. And I don't know if you're familiar with this book, They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. Milton Mayer has been dead for a while. I think it's been about a little over a decade. I could be wrong. It might be longer than that. And in 1955, actually it would have been 53, 54, early 50s, because his book was published in 55, so it probably took him a couple of years to write it. But in the early 50s, he was a publisher, or he was one of America's more well-known investigative reporters working out of Chicago for the big Chicago paper. I think it was the Sun-Times, but I'm running from memory here. And he asked his publisher if he could have an assignment where he went to Germany. You know, he was a Jew of German ancestry. If he could go to Germany and find 10 good Nazis and befriend them and find out why they became Nazis. Because America was still in shock. Even in the mid-50s, many of the horrors of the camps and what happened and what went on and how it happened and who did what were still coming in. And he wrote this amazing book. Now, I'd like to preface this by just, a couple of quick stories. This is just from today's news over at Democratic Underground, 951 Riverside, posting an article. Police shoot, kill 80-year-old man in his own bed, don't find the drugs they were looking for. Right? They smashed into this guy's house because some cop says, oh, it smells like they're making meth there. And they shot and killed the 80-year-old guy in his bed. And there were no drugs. He was a white guy, by the way. Black guy gets pulled over by a cop in Florida for playing NWA's F the Police song on Thanksgiving Day. Cop says, you're really playing that song? Pull over. Right. Here's this over at Daily Kos. San Jose police officer on leave after posting death threats to protesters on Twitter. San Jose police officer Philip White said, threaten me, or in Twitter, threaten me or my family, and I will use my God-given and law-appointed right and duty to kill you. Writes a police officer. By the way, if anyone feels they can't breathe or their lives matter, I'll be at the movies tonight, off duty, carrying my gun. So, my question is, and it's probably more directed at white people in my audience than black, because I think that most African Americans have lived with this throughout their lives, although I'd love to hear from our African American viewers and listeners about whether you think things are getting worse or better in terms of interactions with the police. But much like the economic circumstances that African Americans faced 30 years ago before Reaganomics, where, their unemployment rate was higher, their wages were lower, harder to get into college, all those other things. That's now happening to white middle class, and the white middle class is becoming the white working poor. And so, therefore, America, in quotes, which, of course, is white America, is kind of waking up and going, wait a minute. And one of the things that middle class America or white America, whatever you want to call it, is waking up to is that we are, as a nation, becoming more authoritarian. Just the fact that the former vice president of the United States can go on television and defend anally raping prisoners as a legitimate form of interrogation. The murder of a man, frozen to death in a jail cell as a legitimate form of interrogation. Chaining people to the ceiling for hours, for 22 hours. Their joints start disintegrating. Legitimate form of interrogation. These are all banned by international law. Drowning people, waterboarding. I doubt Dick Cheney would feel that these were legitimate techniques for interrogation if they were used on one of his kids. But none of his kids have ever or ever will join the military, just like he never joined the military. So it's the U.S. soldiers who are facing this. But back to Milton Mayer. Milton Mayer wrote, he got to know these 10 guys. One was a baker, one was a college professor. And he talks about how Nazism overcame Germany, this authoritarianism. He says it was not by attack from without or by subversion from within. It was with a hoop and a holler. It's what most Germans wanted. They wanted it, they got it, they liked it. He says, I came home a little bit afraid for my country, afraid of what it might want and get and like under combined pressure of reality and illusion. I felt and feel that it was not German man that I met, but man. He happened to be in Germany under certain conditions. He might be here under certain conditions. He might, under certain conditions, be me. If I and my countrymen ever succumbed to that concatenation of conditions, no constitution, no laws, no police, and certainly no army would be able to protect us from harm. So this morning we were talking about this, and Shano is like, who's a white guy. I'm dealing with the police differently. I would have given them some lip 5 years ago. I don't anymore. Because, they're all about killing people now. So how did this come about? I would say it came about in the wake of 9/11. In the wake of, you can't make a joke at an airport. You can't make a joke anywhere. That we became a nation of frightened people. Mayer writes, these are the words of one of the 10 Nazis that he got to know in Germany. This guy was a college professor who was a good German, right? Never protested the Nazis, just kept doing his job all through the war, teaching college until finally, Hitler fell. He said, this separation of government from the people, this widening of the gap took place so gradually and so insensibly, each step disguised, perhaps not even intentionally, as a temporary emergency measure or associated with true patriotic allegiance or with real social purposes. And all the crises and reforms, real reforms too, so occupied the people that they did not see the slow motion underneath, the whole process of government growing remoter and remoter. Kind of reminds you of the conservative call for less government. To live in this process, he says, is absolutely not to be able to notice it. Please try to believe me, unless one has a much greater degree of political awareness, acuity, than most of us ever had occasion to develop. Each step was so small, so inconsequential, so well explained on occasion, or regretted, that unless one were detached from the whole process from the beginning, unless one understood what the whole thing was in principle, what all these little measures that no patriotic German could resent must someday lead to, one no more saw it developing from day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing. And then one day, it is over your head. And then he goes on to talk about his experience and how, how it happened. And he really, this guy was not making an excuse for not confronting the fascists. In fact, he talks about that a little later on. So my question, have you noticed that in the last 15 years, our country has become, frankly, a different country? Or am I just projecting this? Am I just imagining this?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And inasmuch as it's become a different country for whites, I'm guessing it's also become a different country for blacks. I'm curious about how that is. And people of other minority races.